Here we are in a typical Australian home. This is Colin Cook. Oh shit, I got it around the wrong way. Fuck.
Oh, no.
Here we are in a typical Australian home. This is Colin Cook, my best mate.
Hello.
Second best mate. Oh, equal best mate. Colin Cook, and he's lovely cook. He's real good at cooking. And this is a typical Australian middle class home. Got a TV set. Got dogs.
What's the Australian Open?
Got a bloke here. He's very intelligent. Used to work in men's clothing.
Viva Australia.
Dora the dog?
There's a Dora the dog. There's the oldest dog. And there's another dog. And there's
Go Leighton.
Leslie Curl. She's very intelligent.
Yes, I am.
She's a JP.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, and she's good. And outside is Australian bush. Except there's not much bush because we're in a suburb. Right, so that's... Here we are, a typical Australian home. We got a refrigerator. We got a stove. We got a spare room. All posh stuff. Like living like lords.
I think.
Okay, I'll see if this works. Audio's working. I'll find out soon enough. I've been out in the bush today. I look a bit grubby, but never mind. We don't care about that, do we? Okay. My rent at the crummy one-room apartment that I had in Adelaide ran out, but I didn't want my grandparents to lecture me, so I didn't tell them. I'd visit them every Sunday, eat a lot, say farewell, sneak a blanket out of my old room, and sleep in West Beach sandhills. Racehorses exercised early, so I had to get up before the nags and bury the blanket in the sand, so I didn't have to lug it around all day. At night, it was cold when I dug it out, but I revelled in being the only beatnik in town and stole tomatoes from a market garden and bread from outside of shops when they were delivered early in the morning. I recall being achingly lonely during this 2 months period. I never usually felt lonely, but, I needed a girlfriend. My few friends must have had jobs in the city, so I walked around Henley Beach yearning to run into some equally lonesome beatnik-type girl. One evening, I couldn't find a blanket because I must have buried it in the wrong place. So to sleep warm, I snuck into the grandstand at the old Victoria Park horse race track. There was no fence around it in those days, and once a week on Saturdays they had a race meeting. Through deserted midnight Adelaide I wandered, seeking beat culture in vain. The town's jazz joint required money to enter, and clientele looked pretty square. It was lucky I didn't meet some night-crawling serial killer. There's been a lot of those in Adelaide. There was no fences around my grandstand and no security guards, and so to not advertise my presence, I left before early track work began with the horses. Around 11 a.m, I entered a Norwood wine bar to take a pee in its toilet. All cities had these cheap bars. They boutiqued up in the 80s, but back then they were rough as guts. A faded sign on the window said, Orlando's, and a bucket of sawdust waited near the swinging doors to cover the slops. I sat down to roll a smoke from my pocket full of butts, and a thin old scruffy bloke said, "Hey, young'un, you want to charge?" "Thanks, man," I said. He went to the bar and bought 2 5-ounce glasses of cheap brown muscat. "Go on, mate, get one in ya. You never know when you'll get another." I smiled and we clinked glasses and he sang, "Over the teeth and past the gums, get ready guts, 'cause here she comes." The plonk made me shudder like a kid. To hide it, I spat like an old-timer. There were spittoons, and I hit one with my Nikolov Guzzi technique. Another bloke grinned and said, "Good shot, mate." The average age looked 50, and 20% were women. There were no homeless kids in those days, so it was a novelty for them to chat to a young bloke. By noon, we swam in bibulous conviviality. People shared flagons of wine at tables, and I gradually became pissed. Someone gave me a meat pie. Rose, an Aboriginal lady, told me about a soup kitchen on East Terrace. Go down there at 8 a.m. and 12:30 and get a free feed. You need to fatten up. And a bloke sneered, yeah, mate, someone will grab you and use you for a dunny brush. People laughed and I blushed. At 6 o'clock, closing time, the barman yelled for us to get out. Rose said, come to a party. All the winos pooled money to buy wine, and we staggered out the door, determined not to lose the warmth in our guts. Rose guided me to an old run-down house. Inside the house were 6 wine lovers, all men, and a slight smell of urine, and another stink that I couldn't quite place. We grogged on, sponsored by a captain. The word captain back then implied a seafarer on leave who'd buy booze. It was our duty to keep the captain happy and buying. When there were no seamen around, the title went to any working stiff willing to spend. Although captains were treated well, they were considered suckers. If the captain was a real square guy, he was called a gig, G-I-G, or a mug, M-U-G, or an alf, A-L-F. I don't know where that come from, must have been old Aussie slang. Rose was a slim woman about 30. She'd got our captain to buy plonk and even part with some money. And during the grog session, she needed to pee. And instead of going out into the winter cold, she retired into a corner and squatted over the neck of an empty milk bottle. Without spilling a drop, she shot a stream of urine into it. Hey, teach me to do that, I quipped, and clapped approval as she pulled up her panties. I noticed they were satin and they looked clean. The captain began to chatter up, so I butted in whenever he got too familiar, and Rose seemed grateful. I was about to explore another room when a bloke yelled, hey, no lights on. There's no blinds in there, and the coppers will see we're here, and they'll bust us for vagrancy. You see, son, the owner of this joint died last week, so we've been staying here, and if anyone finds out he's carked it, we'll all get chucked out. A couple more days when he starts to pong, we'll piss off. Yorkie, the old scarecrow who'd bought me that first plonk, piped up. I ain't leaving. I'm just going to put a peg on me snozzer. And another quipped, I'll shove gorgonzola cheese up me nose. And I showed him I also had nous. You just got to breathe through your mouth instead of your nose. Then you don't smell nothing. Yeah, it's all in the mind, man. And then to show I had wit, I said, to get rid of dead body smell, plug your nose with shit. A couple of blokes thought it was funny. Old Yorkie minced around like Noel Coward, and he said, oh no, dear boy, one could not ponder the aromatic subtlety of a robust Cabernet if a chap's nasal orifices were obstrupulated. In good humour, even when sober, he was about 70 and from Yorkshire in England. I liked him a lot and ran into him later in funny old Adelaide jail. We laughed and told anecdotes until the flagons were drained, and then we dozed off to the land of Nod. I awoke cold and seedy. Snoring bodies lay on the floor, but Lady Rose was gone. Argumentative voices came from another room, and it sounded like Rose was arguing with a bloke. I hoped they wouldn't fight, as I'd feel obliged to protect her. My courage shrank. I was no fighter, but I couldn't have lived with myself if I didn't try. And then I heard a man yell, and then Rose ran into the room and she said, come on, let's go, hurry. By the time she got to hurry, I was out the door. We ran fast for a block, and then slowed down. She smiled and said, "Fucking bastard," she said. He tried to get up me while I was flaked. I was having a real nice sleep, I was. Then I felt something poking at me little virgin bum. I thought it was a brown snake, but it was his witchetty grub Willie. She slipped her arm through mine. Squares were on the street, heading to work, and I felt proud to be seen with this delightful gammon and not to be going to one of their boring jobs. I'd seen the movie Jeddah, and I'd seen films about black slavery, but Rose was the first Koori Aboriginal I'd met. She said we were going to her place. Oh boy, I thought to myself, this is great. Adventure, romance, this is why I left home. We walked and talked and joked, and I was in love again. I'd walked through life with this woman. Rose led me to an old-style rooming house. "We got to tiptoe along this passage," she whispered. "The old dragon don't allow no visitors, but she can get stuffed." "Okay, I'll finish this tomorrow."